Hey, welcome from all of us here at Swimming Pool Science. Let's get started by shutting the pool down. If you've got a mechanical time clock, remove all the tabs and put it into the off position. If you have an automatic water leveler, make sure that's shut off too. And for those of you with variable speed pumps, make sure to deactivate those by pushing the start, stop, or on off button.
Hey everybody, today we're going to be draining and acid washing this swimming pool right here. As you can see, the water's clear, but we've got some surface staining going on. There's some metal staining happening, some iron staining. I don't know if you can tell by the video, but the water is significantly blue. It's got a lot of copper in it as well. So this thing's well due for a drain, and we're going to try and remove some stains by acid washing the pool. The thing to remember about an acid wash is we're removing a very thin layer of that plaster surface, okay? Every time we acid wash, we're taking off more and more of that plaster. There's no way of telling how deep those stains run. So there's no guarantees that this acid wash is going to get this plaster back to being perfectly white. I can tell you that we're probably going to see a significant difference, but I can't tell you how much. The other thing to remember is with a plaster pool like this, we've got to remember plaster is very temperamental and it's very sensitive to temperature changes when there's no water in the pool. Okay, just like concrete, when the temperature goes up, the plaster expands. It's got nowhere to go but up and off the surface. Okay, we call that blistering. What can happen is that plaster heats up, it expands, it lifts off, and then when we put water back in, that shrinks up. If you've ever seen pools with spots on the steps and things like that where it looks like plaster's missing, that's what's happened. That plaster's heated up in certain spots and contracted and broken and cracked. So hopefully we can avoid that. It's not very hot out. The next thing we're going to do is set the pump. What I need to do now is attach my hose, which on my sub pump, I've got a nice 1.25 inch nipple that I can compress my flexible vac head fitting on. And I've got all my hose back here. When you set your pump, you want to hang on to the rope, not the cord coming out of it. We drop it in, just like that. Give our hose, a little extra hose into the water, and then we're going to work it over to the center, the deepest part of the pool.
To attach additional hoses, get a good coupler and then wrap it tightly with more duct tape than you think it needs. And remember, the more hoses you add, the slower it's going to drain. Take care not to flood yours or your neighbor's homes. And also, don't forget to comply with your local and state laws regarding pool drains. Also, when you go to plug the pump in, make sure the plug is away and out of the water where it won't fall in.
Okay. All right, we're underway. Draining the pool, and it's just going to be a matter of hours. This one's probably going to be done overnight, so first thing in the morning we'll be ready to go with our acid wash, and we'll get started then. Okay, we're back here. The pool's empty, as you can see, and we're going to start our acid wash. First and foremost, remember, this is going to be giving off toxic fumes. Think about safety stuff, pay attention. This is how I do it. I'm a professional. I don't know, I'm probably going to die of cancer in 20 years, but this is how I roll. Couple safety things. When you're mixing, we're going to mix a 50-50 solution. So what I've got here is I've got my 31% hydrochloric acid here. Is how it comes in the bottle. I'm going to mix that down 1 gallon of water to 1 gallon of acid. So I'm diluting this by half. On this pool, because we've got significant metal stains, I'm also going to use some Plaster White and Bright, which is going to aid in the acid sticking to the side of the pool. It helps it even out and just helps the acid work a little more effectively. And then I'm also going to add a little bit of Aquadex 50 stain off by Biodex to help pull out some of these metal stains. First thing you want to remember, always add acid to water, never the other way around. It's much more of a violent interaction adding water to acid, so we always add acid to water. I'm actually going to pour a little bit of that in. I'm going to add a touch of my Plaster White and Bright, not too much, just a little bit, because this stuff's going to cause it to really foam up. and really be sticky. And then I add just a touch of my Aquadex 50 stain off. And we'll get that mixed in right now for that initial pour here so that everything's all mixed together nice. Just pour that in. Go. Set that bucket aside. We'll use that to scrub the floor at the very end. Another thing you want to do is your light. Check your light. If you have an old light with a brass ring, you're going to want to pull that light out and set it up on the deck. If it's got a stainless steel ring, it's just fine. So I've got my water in first, and like I said, like we did before, then we'll put the acid in next. Got my Biodex products I'm going to add. I'll actually add those last so that they won't foam up on me when I'm trying to fill this up. So go ahead and add our acid. And I want to keep the hose nearby in case I spill any of this straight acid while I'm pouring it into this jug so I can clean that, because I don't want that straight acid spending too much time on this pool surface. Put that aside. We'll add just a little bit of our stain off. And a glob of our Plaster White and Bright. And I'll go ahead and give that a mix. Now you don't need necessarily to have these extra aids with you to get an effective acid wash. It's not the keystone to the acid wash. It's just something extra we're doing on this pool because it's pretty heavily stained with metals. All right, now we're ready to start the wash. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that this surface is nice and wet. That's going to prevent the acid from streaking, and it's going to give a more even finish when we're done. And pick a point so you know. We don't know how deep these strains run or how effective this acid wash is going to be. We may not be able to see significantly how much the acid changes the surface. So I'm going to start here where the vacuum plugs in. I'm going to go halfway across the steps to there. Now you'll notice I'm doing this barefoot. Typically I do it in just a pair of old ratty shorts. Acids might make your feet itch a little bit, but you get your hose handy right here. It doesn't bother me, but you need to do what you need to do, so please take safety precautions. Pour. Now when I pour, I like to pour about midway up the tile line to try to get a little bit of that calcium line and work on that a little bit. Typically that's a specialized cleaning deal that takes its own tools, but that acid will take that off just a little bit. You notice when I'm pouring it so it flows a nice clean sheet that's nice and even all the way down. When we get to the steps or we're washing a bench, you'll have to pour a little extra to make sure that the surface evens out. Because it's going to want to streak when it gets to the wall. So sometimes I'll start brushing that just a little bit early on top to kind of remove those streaks and get a nice even coat on there. We'll let this sit for just a second and then we'll start brushing. And when we brush, I like to brush it up the wall nice and slow, because I go up real fast with all this foam and I hit this cantilevered edge on the deck, you're going to end up covered in acidic foam and it's not going to feel good. So brush nice and gently, deliberately, and evenly while you're doing this. Also, we want to make sure when our acid goes to the floor, I like to spread it out a little bit because it might run down a channel and it'll cause a streaking pattern on the floor of the pool. So I like to make sure that it's nice and spread out on the floor. The other thing to remember, this is a pretty shallow pool. The deeper your pool is, if you have a deep end on your pool, two things. This foam is extremely slippery, okay? It's like someone greasing the brake of your pool. So be very, very careful. Watch where you're walking. You don't want to slip and fall. The other thing about the deep end of the pool is that the longer or taller your walls are on the pool, the more you have to pour down that wall to get a nice streak. So you have to slow down the rate at which you're pouring it across the wall at the deep end of the pool, so that there's enough acid there to run down and make a nice sheet as you go. So you're going to use more acid in the deep end on the walls than you would on the shallow end walls. Try that again. I told you guys it was slippery. You want it to come down in nice sheets. Oh, that's good. Now, as far as the puddle on the bottom goes, it's had plenty of acid in it. Take a few minutes periodically, or a couple seconds periodically, and just give that a scrub with the existing water that's in it, and that's going to help even that out so it's not too overstained or too understained in relation to the rest of the acid wash on your pool. Don't forget to move whatever hoses are around in there, scrub them, push them out of the way, scoot the sub pump out of the way a little bit so you can get underneath where that is. And that should allow for everything to be nice and even. Alright guys, so we've completed our acid wash. But I'm going to leave this pump going, this hose going for a little while longer, just to flush out the last bit of acid that we got down pooled in the bottom of the pool. So I'll take this time and just clean off all my stuff that I'm taking out of the pool, make sure to rinse it, make sure it's acid free so that I'm not carrying any acid on the pool, out of the pool, or maybe even tracking it on the deck and staining the deck. Just clean everything out really good. Find all your caps, get everything together, get it out of the pool and all clean. So we talked about this before and I want to talk about it again because it's important. Always read all the safeties and warnings on all the chemicals and stuff. Remember, this is acid. This is the kind of stuff James Bond villains dissolve their enemies in. So we want to be really careful, make sure we're using proper safety equipment or know exactly what we're doing. The other thing about temperature and pool plaster, okay? Pebble Tech pools tend to be a little more resilient when it comes to temperature. You can acid wash and drain those pools when it's a little bit warmer out. With plaster, we don't like to drain it if it's going to be above about 80 degrees. It gets very temperamental and it will expand and contract very rapidly in temperature changes, which leads to blistering and problems with the plaster.